Hello, it's Sonia here with The Pretty Stitch. Welcome to my channel. If this is your first time joining me, I'm so happy to have you here. So today is Tuesday, and that means it's Tunisian Tuesday. So I thought we would continue with kind of comparing knitting to Tunisian crochet. So last week I kind of went in depth to explain how certain knitting patterns could be converted into Tunisian crochet, and I'm still in my beginning journey of exploring this. I haven't really done a huge deep dive into converting knitting patterns into Tunisian, so I'm sure there's people out there that have a lot more knowledge than I do, but I've been having fun with it. So today I thought we might try this stitch pattern. So here's my trusty Knitting Stitch Dictionary magazine. So I thought maybe we could try this one here. Now with those directions, it says to cast on a multiple of 4, but because we're doing Tunisian crochet and we always have our bookend stitches, we need to chain a multiple of 4 and then add 2. So I went ahead and chained 14, and I'm using my H hook or 5mm hook, and this is Caron Simply Soft yarn, and I would consider it kind of more like a DK weight. They label it as worsted, but it's a little bit lighter weight. It's kind of in between worsted and DK. Alright, so let's do our setup row. So turning our chain over, working in the back bump, we're going to insert our hook in that second bump from our hook, and we're just going to pull up loops like we do normally with Tunisian crochet. And if you are not familiar with Tunisian crochet, I do have a complete playlist that goes over the basics to help you get started. And Tunisian crochet, each row is always worked in 2 parts. So this is row 1 we are working on. In the first part that we're doing right now, we are putting our stitches on our hook, which is called the forward pass. And then the second part, we will take our stitches off, and that will be the return pass. And each part equals 1 row. Alright, so there we go. We have 14 loops on our hook. So whatever you chain, you will have the same amount of loops on your hook. Okay, so let's work these off. So we're going to yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2 for the rest of the row. Alright, so there we go. There is row 1. So according to the directions for the knitting pattern, we want to knit 2, purl 2 across, so that will definitely work. So we're going to do that. So our first stitch, we're working the Tunisian knit stitch, so you're working through that vertical bar. And if you're not familiar with the knit stitch, that is in the playlist. So our next 2 stitches are purl, so we have our yarn in front, and we work our purl stitch. And we're going to work 2 purl stitches, so we're just going to repeat this across, 2 knit, 2 purl. So because we're adding purl stitches to this stitch pattern, it shouldn't curl, which will be nice. A lot of Tunisian stitch patterns tend to curl, as do regular knit stitch patterns. They often curl as well. So purl stitches in Tunisian crochet and in regular knitting do help with the curling. Alright, we have 3 stitches left. We're going to work 2 purl. Now if you were just doing regular knitting, you would just have those 2 purl stitches, but because it's Tunisian crochet, we have to work in that stitch that looks like a chain. So we are going to insert our hook through that stitch and pull it up. So again, we still have 14 loops, and we're going to work our return pass like we did for row 1. So yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2 for the rest of the row. Alright, so there we go. That is row 2. Okay, so we're ready to begin row 3. So we are going to repeat row 2. So we're going to work 2 knit stitches, 2 purl stitches all the way across, and then in that last stitch that looks like a chain, we are going to just insert our hook through that chain and then work our return pass. Okay, so there is row 3. So this will be, the directions will be slightly different than the knitting version because of just the way knitting works in rows versus Tunisian crochet in rows. As I explained in the video last week, which I can place a link to that if you're interested in seeing that. Where knitting, you're kind of going back and forth. Where Tunisian crochet, we're always starting each row on this end. So that does make things a little bit different. All right, so let's begin row 4. We're going to work a purl stitch first, so yarn in front. And if you're not familiar with purling, that is in the playlist. Okay, and then we're going to work 2 knit stitches. So inserting our hook through those vertical bars, and then we work 2 purl stitches. Two knit stitches until we have 3 stitches left. So we do have 3 stitches left. So we're going to finish the pattern. We're working a knit stitch, and now we have 2 stitches left. So we're going to work a purl stitch, working in the wrong loops there, goodness gracious. And now we work in that stitch that looks like a chain, and we work these guys off like we normally do. Yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2 for the rest of the row. Okay, so for row 5, we are going to be repeating row 4. So in each purl stitch, you're going to work a purl. In each knit stitch, you're going to work knit stitches. So our first stitch is purl, and then the next 2 are knit stitches. The next 2 stitches are purl, and then you'll work your return pass. So I'm going to go do that, and I will meet you back at the end of row 5 here. Okay, so there we go. We were just finished row 5. So rows 6 and 7 will be the same. So for our first 2 stitches, we're going to work Tunisian purl. So this first stitch is a purl. We're going to work right in that purl, that vertical bar, work a purl stitch. And then our next stitch, we're going to work Tunisian purl. And now we're going to work Tunisian knit in the next 2 and 2 Tunisian purl. So you're going to repeat that across 2 purl, 2 knit for row 6. And you're also going to do the same thing for row 7. So each row is worked the same twice. So I'm going to go do that, and I will meet you back at the end of row 7. All right, so I finished up row 7. So we have 2 more rows to go for this particular repeat. Okay, so row 8 and row 9 are the same. So our first stitch is going to be a knit stitch, and then we're going to work 2 purl. And now we work 2 knit. And 2 purl all the way across. Okay, so we have 2 stitches left, so our second to last stitch is going to be a knit stitch, and then we work in that stitch that looks like a chain, and we work these guys off. So then row 9, we will be repeating row 8. So what you'll do is you'll repeat rows 2 through 9 for however long you want your swatch, and it really doesn't matter which row you end on. And then we'll do the bind off, and we will just bind off in pattern. So I'm going to keep going, and I will meet you back. Okay, so here is my swatch. So I worked 17 rows. So let's do the bind off. So what you're going to want to do is you're just going to bind off in pattern. So this stitch here is a knit stitch, so we're going to bind off in knit. And if you're not familiar with bind off, again, I do have that in the playlist. So we're working that bind off, and then our next 2 stitches are purl, so we're going to bind off in purl in the next 2. And binding off just helps your work look its best, gives it a finished look. Okay, so the next 2 stitches are knit. And we're just going to keep going across. So my next 2 are purl, yarn in front. Okay, so there we go. So the reason why I chose this yarn in particular was because I made a swatch with the actual knit pattern with the same yarn. I had 2 balls of this yarn. So this is the knitted version here versus the Tunisian version. And I chose my H hook because I used size 8 needles to do this, and the size 8 needles are like similar in size to an H hook, so I really wanted to see the comparison here. So here we go. This one definitely is more like a ribbing. You can see it has a lot of flexibility to it, and it's also reversible, versus the Tunisian one, you know, we're not getting that flexibility and not reversible, which is pretty common with Tunisian crochet. So let's look at the knitting pattern again, the actual picture here. So you can see, you know, it's got a similar vibe to it, but it's definitely not quite the same. But I do think it's a really cool stitch. And I also made another swatch in a larger hook, and this is worsted weight yarn. So this is number 4 yarn, and I used an eye hook or 5.5 millimeter hook. I worked the same amount of stitches, 14 across, 17 rows, did the bind off. So you can see this one is just a little bit bigger, and this yarn, you can see the stitch definition I think a little bit better with this purple, but I think it's a really pretty stitch, even though it doesn't quite look like the knit version, or, you know, perform, because it's supposed to be like a ribbing, and it's definitely not. But you know, that is common, and I don't want to say that I never say that one craft is better than the other. They both have their place in regular crochet as well. It just depends what you want to make, and to help you choose what craft might be best for whatever project that you want to do. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and if you did, please like and subscribe, and thank you so much for watching.